Hey guys, I'm back for a video today on the beginning of the Watchmen, and today this is going to be part of a three-part series. It's on chapters 1 to 3, but I'm going to focus a little bit on one today because I'm focusing on the introduction of characters. Okay, the first thing is that these characters are not a parody or an homage to the Justice League. They're older than that. There was a company called Charlton Comics that was more popular in the past and had a series of characters that mirrored these. This is kind of important because it it shows this was an age, the Silver Age of comics was an age where was an age that had kind of like the full idealism of that era, and so these characters were after Superman and Batman, and they had very much a 1960s, early 1960s kind of optimism to them. And then I want to talk a little bit about how the characters are introduced. Um, the characters are introduced one at a time, and as you can see, Alan Moore takes great care to have them introduce and give the story about them. We don't have a lot of backstory yet. It's alluded to. Those will come later. But hint, we're not going to get backstories in all the comics. This is important because one of the things that we're looking for is we are looking for a protagonist. So, what's the big deal about a protagonist? The protagonist is an element of storytelling that's almost universal. And if there is not a traditional protagonist, there is a meditation on what the protagonist is. So one of the things that gives the textual sophistication of this is that there is a huge mystery of exactly who the protagonist is. A protagonist, remember, it's about how the words or the story makes the feels. So a protagonist is very, very important because it gives us a launchway into our imagination, into the story. It kind of allows us, through the mimesis of the narrative, to put ourselves in that world of imagination. When you play as a kid and you imagine that you were a superhero or a tiger or a fairy princess or whatever, psychologists call that shaping. And having a protagonist is very important to your ability to shape into the story. Who is the protagonist? Rorschach is a candidate because he is a detective. I'm going to talk a little bit about the detective or the mystery nature of Watchmen in a little bit, but the detective in most film noir and detective films, the detective is who you follow along because you become involved in figuring out the discovery with the detective. Is it the nice guy? One of the things is that sympathy and pathos usually comes from the hero being a do-gooder or someone who we can feel with and who we like to associate with because of their morality or their emotions. Nightwing is an obvious candidate for that. But what about Ozymandias? Ozymandias seems to have these Captain America type qualities. He seems to have moral rectitude. He's upstanding. He's rich. He has all these kinds of powers. Maybe he is the leader of this band that's going to drag them through. He also seems to have a moral compass, which, for example, Rorschach does not, and Night Owl does not seem competent of. He's the only one. He's one of two people that are only really heroes in a sense. But then, of course, we've got Dr. Manhattan. Dr. Manhattan is an obvious candidate because if this is a story, we are looking for a solution to a problem, and somebody who is all powerful, who saves things at the last minute, which is very typical of, for example, Superman plot lines, would be an excellent candidate for the protagonist. He's mysterious. There's things that we could discover. He could be a great candidate for the one that solves the mystery or solves the story. I want you to pay special attention to Silk Spectre, because if you look at all of them, she's the one that seems to have common sense in chapter 1. In other words, of all these characters with vibrant personalities that are larger than life, she seems to be the everyday person. Night Owl is a candidate for that, but he's very nostalgic about the past, and he kind of has a cheesy love of the past of herodom. She has rejected that. She is an unhero of this group. So what? Why does this matter? Well, and by the way, that is a picture of creepy Alan Moore. Um, it varies a lot because of the storytelling. Alan Moore is trying to engage you with what the nature of the hero is. And in doing so, he has already, in the way that he's written, created a amount of confusion that involves you in making the interpretation. You can see the list of things that are at stake below. With this kind of ambiguity, that also maybe leads us to an ambiguous ending. I'm not saying that as a spoiler alert. I'm just saying that that kind of has a feel of having ambiguity as far as events that happen in the book. There's also room for talking about the very natures of superheroes. So please watch your pathos and watch who you identify with and who you think is going to solve the problem of the story in regard to who is the protagonist of the Watchmen. These characters are amazing.